Let's talk a little football. Today, a look at the Iowa defensive line and its importance if Iowa's going to have another successful season in 2024. Plus, we preview Iowa's matchup today in the Big Ten tournament. It's the Hawkeyes and the Buckeyes. Today, Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked on Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked on Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. We got basketball coming up here as we preview the matchup coming up this evening as the Hawkeyes take on Ohio State in the opening round of the Big Ten tournament. The winner moves on and gets Illinois then tomorrow evening. We'll break that down and take a deeper look at it. Iowa's chances of being an NCAA tournament team, what a win against the Buckeyes would mean for Iowa going forward. We will talk about that. Plus a little wrestling talk later on today as the seeds are out for the NCAA tournament. How'd the draws go for the Iowa Hawkeyes as they try to chase a team trophy? No, not a title. That's Penn State's. But second, third, can they get up there? What it's going to take, we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But want to open things up today talking some football. Football has kind of fallen by the wayside with what we've had with the incredible run out of the Iowa women's basketball team looking to solidify themselves as a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, that's going to be a big conversation piece and really has dominated what we talked about. The Iowa men's team trying to get back on the bubble. We've been there a whole bunch, and it's been relatively quiet from Iowa City. You know, we passed along a few nuggets that have come out, but with Tim Lester taking over as the new offensive coordinator, I thought we would hear a little bit more, that there'd be some more rumblings. Now, they're not practicing at this point. We're still, a week and a half away before we get spring practice opened up. However, I really thought that this was going to be a chance where we were going to find out a little bit more and some of those nuggets to start to come out. Hasn't been the case. It's been incredibly quiet. Good or bad, don't know. No reason to speculate on one way or the other what that is. But I went to a position group that's incredibly important. And as we look at this team, the offensive improvement is going to dominate the storylines, and certainly what we're going to talk about a ton during spring football and throughout the summertime. That's going to be a big part of the conversation. But I want to go to an aspect that maybe has been overlooked. You know, we look at this season coming up this year and 9 starters coming back, all the guys that decide to come back for an extra year of eligibility. You get another year out of Jay Higgins, out of Nick Jackson, both of those guys coming back for another season. Xavier Wampa, what he could possibly ascend to be, and just on and on and on. We've talked a ton about that, and that's important. Sebastian Castro obviously coming back. You know, those kind of guys and what that means for the Iowa defense. But one area we haven't talked a whole lot about is the defensive line. And there is a pretty good, really, connection between when Iowa's good up front and when they're getting to the quarterback more specifically, and how Iowa's successful throughout the course of the year. We've talked in the past about how the turnovers have dried up the last couple of years, and I think there's a reason for that. As team has just looked at how woeful the Iowa offense has become, they didn't have to take chances anymore. They were willing, if it was 3 and out, they're fine with that. If they had to punt it away, they weren't going to take the chances that they did in the past when Iowa's offense was at least competent. And I think that's led to a decrease in the number of turnovers forced over the last 2 seasons. But hand in hand with that is the defensive line. And this past season, the defensive line was good. There were some struggles early on. We certainly saw them struggle against the run much more than we anticipate a Phil Parker's defense is going to early in the season. And they figured it out by the middle of the year. They were playing at a really high level up front. I think a piece of that was Nick Jackson, not just coming into a new system and learning what Phil Parker and company want to do, but he was also moving positions, going from the middle and moving outside. And there was a change there. And he really ascended as the season went on. And you saw that out of Nick Jackson. But the defensive line, all right, they're going to be good because, well, they're good every single year, right? I mean, it's just kind of goes with the territory of what we expect from this Iowa defensive line, that they're going to be really good. And I think they're going to be good again this season. But you lose from a year ago versus Joey the Bull, Joe Evans. 9.5 sacks last year, 13.5 tackles for loss. He finishes in the top 5 all-time in sacks at the University of Iowa. For a walk-on kid that was given jersey number 13, just absolutely amazing what he turned into and morphed into throughout his career. Had the 9.5 sacks, also 10 quarterback hurries a year ago. But not just him, also lost in Logan Lee. And the way Iowa defensive tackles play, you're not going to see many eye-popping statistic, but he was just so steady, so good. And you knew he was going to be in the right space. He was going to play assignment football. He was going to be at a high level and lose him. 3 sacks a year ago from him. Also had another quarterback hurry. Had 3 pass breakups and deflections this past season. So you're losing a lot up front when lose Joe Evans and Logan Lee, both those guys moving on. You need to see, obviously, Y.A. Black continue. And after the shoulder injury that he sustained against Wisconsin, I thought maybe it could be season over for him. Not only was it not season over, I think he played his best football of his career after he sustained a pretty major shoulder injury and played at a really high level, had that big sling on the arm, the big shoulder wrap out there, and he was still playing really, really well. If he continues to improve, as we've seen the last couple of seasons, he's going to be a big piece of what they do in the middle. The one guy, though, that is, I think, number one in terms of importance for this defense and taking another step is Deontay Craig. As we saw Deontay during his sophomore campaign put up a monster season. And there were some rumblings out there that if Craig last season would have had a monster year, that he could be a guy that'd be going out to the NFL draft and he'd be preparing right now to hear his name called. It didn't play out that way. He was banged up. He was injured throughout the course of the season, but just 3 sacks a year ago. Also did have 7 quarterback hurries, so you got to put that in the mix too. But just 3 sacks out of Deontay Craig last season, that was a disappointment. We need 45 to play at a high level. We really do. He is that kind of player off the edge. He has the quick twitch that you're looking for outside. He's got a plethora of moves also. We need Craig to go back to really the guy that we saw as a sophomore and then ascend past that. If I was defensive line, is going to be at an elite level. Another guy we have to put out there is Aaron Graves. And, he comes in All-American out of high school, playing small school football. All right, how is he going to translate? He was out there right away as a true freshman, getting reps and played a ton this past season. 2.5 sacks, 4.5 tackles for a loss last year, but it wasn't as impactful as I thought it was going to be. Very well could be on the job training, and we're going to see a big jump, and we do see that plenty of times. That's another guy that definitely needs to take a step forward. Now, those are the guys we know. You throw Max Llewellyn in there. He was a rotational piece. Of course, had a good play, a bunch of big plays throughout the course of his career. He's going to be out there a whole lot more. So what else? Who are some of the other guys that we're going to be looking at that need to put together strong performances on this defensive line? Ethan Hurkett, obviously another one that is just out there doing his thing and making plays. I think we saw a lot of good things out of him and Llewellyn, kind of rotational outside. But the other one is Brian Allen. Brian Allen last year during spring football, in the open practice that we got at the end, he was outstanding. Then in the one day that we got to see the team during August camp at Kids Day, he was outstanding there. Didn't see a ton of reps, which I was really surprised by. I thought we were going to see a whole lot more out of him this past season. It just didn't come to fruition. So you're kind of left wondering, what's happening there? What is he going to be? Because it looks like he's got the motor you're looking for. Is it something technically that they're still working at, trying to get at that level? Is that kind of the piece that they're looking at? I think that's one part that you're looking at for him this upcoming season. He also lose another couple of guys, not just as we mentioned with Logan Lee moving on, with Evans moving on, both of those guys, but also it really felt like this year we were going to see Ontario Thompson be able to help out inside, and he decided to transfer away. He moved on, and he'll be playing in the MAC, so we didn't see that. Is Brackney going to be a guy? He redshirted this past season. You got Borcherding Johnson, a walk-on that I continue to hear quite a bit about. Kennan from West Des Moines Valley. Can he help out on that defensive line? He's got to get bigger, but that's another one maybe to tuck away for future reference going forward on that front of what he's going to be. And can anybody else be a rotational piece? And what other part of this is we're talking about getting to the quarterback. And that's so important for what Iowa does defensively is getting to the quarterback. Is this the time that we see a move that we all of a sudden see after on the wrestling mat and a little bit on the football field and special teams? Ben Keeter simplify things, keep his weight up, doesn't have to worry about, being a certain weight to be a linebacker. Hey, get as big as you want. And you just become a rush guy. You keep it simple for him, give him the ability to be a rush guy. That's something we've talked about now. Well, going back to when he was still committed to the Hawkeyes back during his high school career. Keep an eye on that one and see if anything does happen on that front for Ben Keeter. Little football talk. That's a good way to kick things off. Let's talk basketball as we continue. Time to get in to the Hawkeyes and the Buckeyes. It's the opening round of the Big Ten tournament. A big, big chance for Iowa. What a win does here for their NCAA tournament resume. We'll talk about it and what it's going to take to beat the Bucks. We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Utah State Aggies are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with its powerful performance against New Mexico, giving them their first outright Mountain West title in program history. They say, win life, go Rogue. That's exactly what the Aggies have done. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. That's NissanUSA.com. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Let's get into it. 5:30 tip-off Central Time this evening as Iowa takes on Ohio State. So the Buckeyes are playing some good basketball, and that's where you have to start. If you just remember this team from what they were going back to when these two teams faced off here about a month ago on that Friday night, this is a much different team. They're playing at a high level after the firing of Holtman. Whatever the reason for, Diebler has got this team playing good basketball. One thing that has been talked about a lot from Ohio State is it's just simplified. You know, every little nuance of the team was magnified with Holtman. And it's just been an ability for them to not have to play scared about that. And that was something that almost felt like was something that was a big, big part of what happened for this team. So this is the numbers currently from my dude, Bart Torvik, at his great college basketball analytical website, barttorvik.com. Currently, the Iowa Hawkeyes odds to make the NCAA tournament are at 20.8%. With a loss to Ohio State, that drops down to 6.5%. It's not happening. A loss here, it's over. You can say it's 6.5%. I mean, we'd have to have a COVID outbreak for this to happen and Iowa to get in. With a win over Ohio State, it jumps up to 41.5%. Still has them out of his tournament field with a win. If you win this game, though, and beat Illinois, suddenly Iowa's chances are up to 63.4%. He has them as an 11 seed if they do that. Beat the Buckeyes, beat the Illini in the quarterfinal round. Iowa's chances increase to 63.4% chance of making the tournament. You get to the championship game all the way up to 75.8%. And guess what? Hey, kids, if they win 4, they're going no matter what because they have the automatic bid and they'll be tournament champions for the second time in the last 3 seasons. Now, that's what we're all hoping for. Another great run. Don't have to worry about it. A question was asked by a Hawkeye fan on Twitter about that and asked him, what if they do win 4 games? He has them, ascending all the way up to a number 8 seed if it plays out in that fashion. Oh boy, would love to see that. Now, yes, we know the number 1 seed's not going to be matched up likely with Purdue. Houston, UConn, yeah, in the second round, the round of 32. That wouldn't be very fun, but maybe it's North Carolina. Maybe it's Arizona. Maybe it's Tennessee. Hey, Iowa and Tennessee's got some tournament history, and though Iowa's lost a couple of tight games to the Vols, third time's a charm. Cross our fingers and hope at the very least. So what's it going to take to beat Ohio State? I mean, we have to start, obviously, what happened the last time out against Illinois. And your seniors, they were bad. Tony Perkins didn't have it, 1 of 10 from the floor in that game. Just really struggled all over the place in the matchup. He's got to step up, and we know his ability off the bounce, how good he can be and be outstanding. Josh Dix didn't make a three-pointer. Hit 6 shots, 6 of 13 from the floor, but 0 of 3 from downtown. Peyton Sanford, he was the only guy offensively that even rated as adequate on the offensive end of the floor in that game against Illinois. And that's not a great Illinois team defensively. That was a huge disappointment in this one. Iowa for the game shoots 7 of 21 for 3. For Iowa standards, that's okay. Obviously not great. You want to be better than that. But we know this is not a great three-point shooting team. But they shoot an uncharacteristic 16 of 44 from inside the three-point arc. That's 36.4%, one of the worst performances of the season in that game, and only put 61 points up in the game. Are we going to see a little more Dembele? I think that's something you're going to have to do. So those are some of the looks at this team. as we remember back to the game against Ohio State and Carver, that was a time that Ohio State was not playing very well. They were struggling in their own right. It was before the firing of Holtman, before Diebler took over. But that took a whole lot of Patrick McCaffrey late in the game. His late clutch free throws were the difference of the game, as they were able to keep them at arm's reach, and a last second heave at the horn off the mark for Ohio State as Iowa survived in that one. It was a very balanced attack. Battle had 17, 14 apiece for Apara and for Thornton. Bruce Thornton, he can really get it going, though, at any time. They shot 7 to 16 from behind the arc. I was going to have to play better than they did in that game the first time out against Ohio State. They're going to have to play at a higher level. This team offensively is really good, 39th in the country in offensive efficiency. The one thing that they're excellent at, not just getting to the free throw line and the free throw rate, they shoot 77% from the free throw line. Got to play smart. Can't foul. Can't get in foul trouble. We don't want the 2-foul rule to come up again for Fran. Got to stay away from that. They pound the ball inside. They will do that. Distribute not a ton of three-pointers overall. They really like to work the ball in and try to get to the free throw line. You know, the old Dr. Tom adage, right? Shoot more free throw, make more free throws than your opponent's attempts. That's what Ohio State certainly likes to do. On the other side, defensively for Ohio State, not a great team on that side. They are 70th in the country in defensive efficiency, but it has gone up throughout the course of the year. And as we look back at Ohio State and kind of what they have been here over, let's say, the last month of the season or so, I think that's kind of a fair way to put it. As we go back to, let's say January, go back to February 10th. There you go. There's a fair number. That's on that Saturday. Ohio State, going back just over a month now, they are one of the better teams in the country. Iowa during that time frame is ranked 34th in the country, 34th, while 42nd for Ohio State. So check that, 27th for Ohio State. They're playing a lot better on the defensive end of the floor. That's been a big difference also for this Ohio State team. Got to be better. I mean, it's as simple as that. To expect Iowa's going to be able to grind out a 68-64 win, it's just not their style. Got to get the pace up, have to play with pace, have to maybe even see a little bit more Brock Harding in this game. If he was as good as he was in the first half against Illinois, and Iowa easily could have been down 25 at the half if they didn't have Brock Harding in the first half. And if he has it, and if we're seeing a struggle, if Josh Dix just can't get it going, if another struggle continues for Tony Perkins, you got to go with Harding. You just do at this point. It is do or die for this Iowa basketball team and what they have. Speaking of do or die, that is the case for the wrestling squad as they get ready for next week's NCAA tournament down in Kansas City. We'll talk a little bit about the seeds that came out last night and break down exactly what the paths are going to be for the Hawkeye wrestling team. A little wrestling talk as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes Podcast. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV Stick you can plug into your existing TV. It's going to provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball, college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here on Locked On, most of the big pro leagues, college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive in to all the games analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and a whole lot more, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos. You got it with Fire TV. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Wrap it up with a little wrestling. And as I mentioned at the top, look, if Iowa, what you're searching for is a team trophy. Finish in the top 3. Penn State's going to run away with it. And even with all the goofiness that's happening inside that program, guys injured, what's happening there? The top half of the bracket just absolutely loaded at 174 pounds with Carter Starocci. With the injury that he's gone through, he's the number 9 seed. Ridiculous in its own right. Mekhi Lewis, the number 1 seed there at the top. That's also the side of the bracket, by the way, that Patrick Kennedy is in. And we'll get to Patrick here in a moment. But at the top, as we kick things off at the top of the bracket at 125 pounds, it's Drake Ayala. He earns the number 3 seed. Really good spot there on the opposite side of Braden Davis from Penn State, who's got off to a great start in his career. He's the number 1 seed. You're looking at potentially in the quarterfinals, facing off against Oklahoma State's Troy Spraitley. We saw him earlier this season in that final duel of the regular season. The number 2 seed out of Lehigh is Luke Stanich. I think the real chance here for Drake Ayala to make it to the championship bout, and maybe Iowa's best chance of getting there. We move on and we go to 133 pounds. Brody Teske gets the number 15 seed. He'll open up against 18-seeded Derek Cardinal from South Dakota State. Then with a win, we'll likely see undefeated wrestler from Lehigh, Ryan Crookham. Some people follow college wrestling a little bit more than me, think that, Teske maybe's got a shot in that one. Going to be a tall task, but that's what in front of him at 133 pounds. At 141, the other great chance of potentially getting to the championship bout, that's Real Woods, 18-3 on the season. A tough end of the season for Woods. At the end, he'll be looking at Bo Bartlett in the semifinals if the seeding plays out of Penn State. The number 1 seed, Ohio State's Jesse Mendez, on the top of the bracket there at 141. 149 pounds for the Hawkeyes. And that one path is going to be pretty difficult for Caleb Rathje. Now, he'll open up with Jordan Williams against Oklahoma State. Then after that, he will likely face off against 4-seeded Caleb Henson of Virginia Tech. 25-2 on the season out of the ACC, is also on the top half of the bracket. That means that Reg Lovett of Nebraska is on his side of the bracket if he would advance and get to the semifinals. At 157 for the Hawkeyes, Jared Franick, a number 10 seed. 23-5 on the season for Franick. If he wins his opening round bout, as he gets produced, Joey Blaze anticipate he will. It'll be either Peyton Keller from Ohio or another MAC wrestler from Central Michigan, Johnny Lovett. You're looking at potentially facing off then, even with the win against Keller, against the number 2 seed from Arizona State, Ja'Cory Teamer. So that's the side of the bracket. A difficult draw there for Jared Franick in that one. 165 pounds for the Hawkeyes. As Caliendo, he gets the number 6 seed, looking at potentially in the quarterfinals. That'll be against Julian Ramirez of Cornell. He's the number 3 seed, also on the bottom side of the bracket. Undefeated Messenbrink out of Penn State. Yes, once again, we go that route. 174, we mentioned it. Patrick Kennedy, wrong side of the bracket here. You got Shane Griffin, the 4 seed. Ridiculous. That's who he would win if he'd pull an upset against 5th-seeded Philip Cargliano of Harvard. Top seed Mekhi Lewis is there. Mentioned Starocci is also on that side of the bracket. Ridiculous. Absolutely loaded on that front. That's what we have there in that weight class. Continuing through, and we get in to 197 for the Hawkeyes, and well, that one is it's empty. Yeah, it's empty, and we could talk about the disappointment there, but it's just the reality. And then we get to heavyweight, and that is where Bradley Hill, who got the call, he is at 20-7 on the year, gets the 25 seed. He'll get NC State's Owen Treppen. Look, you put all this together, and Iowa, it's about finishing in the top 3. And you hate to be at this point, but after the way that the season ended before the duel against Oklahoma State, that's just kind of the bed that they made themselves into. We'll have you covered. It'll be a busy week. Hopefully we'll have the men in the NCAA tournament, the women obviously hosting the first and second round of the NCAA tournament, and wrestling. I've said it for years. I've talked to my boy Doug Schwab up at UNI, former Iowa national champion. You have to move this thing away from this weekend. It just does not make sense. I understand they sell out the building every single time. The NCAA wrestling numbers are dwindling, not just in terms of numbers of Division I programs, but the TV numbers have started to go back. You're going up against a behemoth. Move it back a couple of weeks. Push back the calendar. You have to do it for the sport. Big picture. You have to look at that. Unfortunately, feels like they're unwilling to do just that. With that, we are out of here for today. We'll be back tonight with an instant reaction podcast after Iowa, Ohio State. We got you covered on that front, and get ready for the weekend. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. And don't forget, coming up, Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown, Monday, March 18th at 6 a.m. Central Time. Our experts, Andy Patton and Isaac Shoddy, will break down their brackets and discuss everything you need to know to fill out a winning bracket and prepare for this year's NCAA tournament. Find the Locked On Bracket Breakdown Monday, March 18th on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast feed and wherever you get podcasts. We'll talk to you again after the Hawkeyes and the Buckeyes tonight, instant reaction style. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Go Hawks.